So how did we arrive at this point? A civilization intent on digitalizing everything, place, action, thought, and moment in time on land, in the heavens, and in the sea. Technology as being rolled out now can best be termed techno-ecocide, the systemic destruction of our ecosystem by the exploitative use of technology. But can technology be integrated into the world in such a way that it enhances, not harms? And if so, how do we get from here to there? Many governments and international institutions by and large support big corporations through policies and subsidies that prop them up while disadvantaging local communities and businesses. With the help of these policies, a single corporate-dominated world market has emerged that not only dictates economic policies, but shapes worldviews, blurs the lines between government and the private sector, and threatens Earth's ecosystems. And yet the push for global economic growth and ever more digital connectivity continues unabated. Most economic growth is about commoditization, taking from nature, altering the taking, assigning value, and then bringing the end product to market to be sold. The more commerce there is, the more resource extraction there will be, and the more fossil fuels will burn, causing further degradation to our ecosystem. In capitalism, surplus is an accepted and expected norm. Surplus involves marketing strategies that draw people to consume more than they need and contributes further to overextending our balance sheet with nature. And yet companies must either play this game or risk getting outcompeted by others and left behind. The late environmental activist Polly Higgins once recounted a conversation she had with the CEO of some big oil company. The gist of his response was, "You're right. I agree with everything you say, but I cannot say that publicly. I would be fired. Shareholders would sue me and someone worse would replace me." He, like the rest of us, was stuck in a system he didn't like. For most mega corporations to survive, there are externalities that are outsourced. These externalities land on us and on the natural world, and in many cases, exact a heavy toll. In the case of technology, briefly, if we can in fact be brief with their externalities, these take the form of impacts on our health from the radiation and on flora and fauna, decline in insects and pollinators, loss of privacy, cyber attacks, psychosocial effects, e-waste, mega energy consumption, and as Susan Foster will explain later, fire risks. Minerals mined in exceedingly harsh and dangerous conditions involving child labor and contributing to the death of nearly 6 million people in the DRC alone. And now mining in the deep sea, threatening marine animals, the ocean's ecosystems, and the very life of the planet. As Yuval Harari warned, new technologies will soon give some corporations and governments the ability to hack human beings. The perpetual growth model is particularly problematic when it comes to technology. The supposed need for lower latency, ever more connectivity, data-intensive videos, and new devices, planned obsolescence, apps, and all to the backdrop of ever-ticking quarterly reports to shareholders that must show profits at all costs. These are propelling us toward a future most of us either don't want or don't know enough to know we don't want. A quick glance at tech's fast-moving evolution from just the last 15 years goes from 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G, now 6G, the introduction of Wi-Fi and smart meters, then smartphones, which have taken up residence in about 90% of the population's pockets and minds. Internet of Things and the satellites, tens of thousands littering the skies. Smart ocean, also known as the Internet of Underwater Things, and to ensure world dominance and continued profits from the weapons industry, the US military is now a major player in the digital revolution. Their aim? To connect all branches of the military, Navy, Army, Marines, Coast Guard, Space Force, Air Force, into one lethal, AI-controlled, connected system of war. And as if that were not enough, now metaverse. As described by the Metaverse Global Congress, whatever that is, ready or not, the metaverse is going to change the world as we know it over the coming decade. The metaverse promises to offer true-to-life sights, sounds, and even smells, where a tour of ancient Greece or a visit to Seoul Cafe can happen from your home, decked out with full spectrum VR headsets, smart clothing, and tactile responsive haptic gloves. The at-home traveler can touch the Parthenon in Athens or taste the rich foam of a Korean Dalgona coffee. Is this crazy tech agenda what anyone in their right mind would choose? And yet here we are, entrapped in a worldwide web of technology gone rogue. With the advent of fossil fuels and electricity, we gained exponentially more power and energy than the strength of a single ox or person, thus providing a multiplying effect on competition and consumption. And we very willingly stepped into the excess offerings provided by fossil fuels. Yet, as we all know, fossil fuels are finite, and extraction and burning wreak havoc on the environment. Nate Hagens, a professor and well-known expert on energy and its implications for our future, tells us that to live comfortably, households need only use a tiny fraction of the energy we currently consume. Yet we are led to believe otherwise, and we succumb to the tune of a steady decline in overall happiness and well-being. So-called renewables such as solar or wind that are intended to replace fossil fuels are extremely energy and mineral intensive to manufacture and provide far less energy input to output. According to Hagen, the grossly exaggerated lifestyle to which we have become so accustomed cannot be maintained without fossil fuels, which, should we want to continue down that path, would take another million or so years to replenish. We find ourselves entrapped in and part of a system that is anti-life, a system that almost no one in their heart of hearts embraces, even those at the top who profit handsomely from it all. I venture sense a cognitive and affective dissonance. There seems to be no way out from the breakneck speed of technological innovations which rely heavily on fossil fuels and electricity and lead to exponentially more competition, consumption, combat, environmental degradation, a diminishing energy supply, and for so many of us, to feelings of frustration, hopelessness, despair, and grief. But in that very grief itself, we can see each other and all of humanity in a most authentic way, recognizing our foibles, virtues, genius, and all that makes us humans such enigmatic beings. We are together as we cry for Mother Earth and all the creatures we've harmed, and together with our children, many now digital orphans who have been mercilessly robbed of their childhood by technology. Together, we witness the confused and piercing gaze of animals seemingly begging us to stop destroying their habitats. And we're also together with those who install cell towers in our neighborhoods, in front of our homes, who, entrapped in the system, must make a living and provide for their family. We're together even with the CEOs of AT&T and Verizon, who, like so many of us, would do the right thing if they could. But they cannot. They're stuck in the quagmire and can't find a way out. No one is to blame, yet much is to be corrected. And likely the corrections will not happen with the systems, norms, beliefs, values, and customs we now have in place. What most people are coming to realize now is that societies are largely built upon beliefs and values. So for a new, more life-affirming civilization to emerge, our beliefs and values must shift. And these changes will then spread quite naturally to others, much like the ripples on a pond when a stone is tossed in. But how do people change beliefs and values in a world so distracted by technology and with the current trajectory dragging us yet further into cyberspace, minds, bodies, and lives merged with technology? For myself, I find I must disconnect from the structures in which I am entrapped. I live off the grid, but I extend that to living off every grid that locks me into rote thinking and actions. I spend much time alone in nature where my heart and mind can improvise, unencumbered. And I have consciously slowed down as I move through my day. And yes, I accomplish less, but hopefully more mindfully and authentically. One day when I was out walking, my attention was drawn to a neighbor's lawn. It was crispy, clean, and manicured, just so, like a crew cut on a young boy's head. Not a weed or wildflower to be seen, nothing to interrupt this homogeneous display of conquest and control. Odd, I thought to myself. This looks so unnatural. This parcel of land would host a forest teeming with life and biodiversity had it not been cut down to size and doused with who knows what chemicals. There would be different insects busily foraging, pollinating, and breeding, and a supportive network of mycelium underground forming pathways for the strong trees above to share and care for one another. It then occurred to me that we humans have manicured ourselves in much the same way. Our customs, norms, and education cut us off before we can even know or manifest who we are, who we can become, and how we will contribute to the global family of life. Beyond the loss of so vastly much potential and living spirit, as a monoculture, we leave ourselves open to infestation from pests, such as the tech industry. Something that, had we maintained biodiversity, psychodiversity, affect diversity, and essence diversity, we may have avoided. As I personally feel into the future, these are some of the thoughts that run through my mind. Can we find a viable path forward by awakening to local futures, as Helena Norberg encourages? Will our future entail returning to Indigenous values or coming to understand that we are all indigenous to the earth? Will a path be found in dissolving the echo chambers that divide us on and offline? Or perhaps in protesting war, digital passports, or 5G towers? Maybe in reconnecting with the natural world, planting a garden, promoting permaculture, or perhaps in finding deep contentment with just enough and no more, as it's well established that happiness is not correlated with more possessions. Perhaps the answer lies in truly understanding that life resides in the space between all beings, and that change is the only constant, as it is the nature of nature. Perhaps the answer lies in spending more time with actual people in real, not virtual real world, and sharing in deep and empathic listening to their stories and being with them as they dream their way out of prison. I think our path lies in the convergence of all of these, and likely in infinitely more possibilities, for nature never has one single answer. Each one of us is a unique being. We all have a different set of life circumstances, gifts, and challenges. Only we know what our part is, moment by moment, issue by issue, encounter by encounter. As the happenings of the world permeate our being, we change. Our ever percolating intuition changes as new ingredients seep in, and we may just find ourselves guided toward the response that feels right for each one of us at every new moment. And bit by bit, the structures that have defined and confined our lives will melt away and become the compost of lived experience that will provide essential nutrients as we coalesce into a new civilization, one that embraces our interconnectedness with all living beings, and one that truly cherishes life's diversity.